Did you know that hippos use their urine to attract a partner? Did you know that male porcupines actually spray their urine high pressure on the females in hopes to attract them? I never realized that there were gay giraffes. Or gay walruses, lions, or elephants. A little unsettling that a female praying mantis, after sex, will sometimes just go ahead and eat their partner. The poor old giant Galapagos tortoise, in the wild, doesn't have sex until it's 40. You may have heard that the male seahorse gives birth. That's pretty cool. So does the pipefish. Pretty crazy that when squids mate, they'll have sex for nearly 2 weeks straight. Some animals have pretty strange mating patterns, but so do humans. We went as far as labeling and regulating our relationships. Around it, we formed religious traditions, social and civil practices, a booming wedding industry, and rules, both legal and unspoken. All about this thing called marriage. A formally recognized union between two people, and it's something that doesn't often work. Let me fill you in. According to the CDC, in America there's a divorce approximately every 30 seconds. That's over 2,400 divorces a day, over 16,500 divorces a week, and over 870,000 divorces a year. A study conducted by the Louisiana State University concluded that approximately 88% of people between the age of 20 and 29 believe to have a soulmate. Yet, almost 1/3 of adults over 45 are unmarried. That's a lot of people who are going to be disappointed. The chances of your marriage ending in divorce are 20% within 5 years, 35% within 10 years, and 50% within 20 years. Those definitely aren't a betting man's odds. I don't understand the point of this institution. Why is the divorce rate rising, and how is this affecting people? First, what is the definition of marriage? Well, a couple different things. The first set of definitions, marriage as the institution, a relationship recognized by law. Secondly, marriage defined as the act itself, the weddings, festivals, traditions, all that stuff. And thirdly, marriage as the close union of any two things.
Well, marriage is something we've always had because it's a biological given for reproduction. Reproduction is unthinkable without a stable couple to raise the child. So we've always had marriage. We've always had some way of bringing the man and the woman together in the hopes that they would stay together as long as the children needed socialization.
The earliest recorded marriage contract we know of was written about 2,500 years ago in Elephantine, Egypt, where a lucky groom got a 14-year-old bride in exchange for 6 cows. How romantic.
The individuals getting married really had very little or usually no choice in whom they married. Marriage was a family thing or a tribal thing or a clan thing. It was arranged, and it was arranged so that it would benefit the family, the clan, or the tribe financially, politically, or socially. Perhaps it would be to acquit a debt. Perhaps it would be to get, let's say, an ugly daughter married off or a horrible son married off in order to permit the family to marry off the good ones.
Marriage is an artifact that starts from the premise that women are supposed to be the possession of a man. In fact, the overriding philosophy of man has always been that women were chattels, property, and that they were never to be responsible for themselves. They were always to be the responsibility of their master.
So marriage began as a form of trade. It's definitely evolved over the years, I'll give it that. But a more recent evolution has actually been a rise in divorce.
But what is new is the fragile durability of marriage today. Marriages throughout history have been almost always very stable affairs. Whether the couple were happy or not, it was really a secondary matter. Once they were wed, they stayed together. But that's no longer true today.
Research shows that individuals who are divorced or separated, and especially you actually see this among separated who are not quite divorced yet, you see higher rates of depressive symptoms, you see more anxiety, more mental health problems, less satisfaction. So at the individual level, we know that compared to other groups, being divorced or separated is not good for people's well-being. We know that it takes a toll.
We now know, psychological studies, we now know that we are actually wired as human beings not to be loners, but to be in relationships. Doesn't mean you have to get married, but we are wired to connect with people.
It's quite a difficult thing for society to embrace the range of problems and difficulties with divorce. The economic fallout, the effect on families and lives, extended families, and particularly on children.
We humans are not designed to be alone. We need interaction with others in order to thrive and survive. And so ending up alone is not good for our health. My fear, and I'm sorry if I seem a little negative about this, but I don't see it getting better. I see it getting worse.
Now, what we have today is quite different, even though superficially it looks the same. The tie between the couple, the tie between the man and the woman, has become sexualized. And from one point of view, this is a good thing, but from another point of view, it makes the couple very unstable, because sexuality is it's like mercury. It's a very unstable kind of quality. It's there one day, ardent, intense desire, and gone the next. But if sexuality is the basis of the union, then you've got a recipe for unstable unions.
Interestingly, it's the baby boomers which have seen the biggest rise in divorce. In 1970, only 13% of people aged 46 to 64 were divorced, separated, or had never been married. That number nearly tripled by 2010. In 1990, only 10% of the divorced population was over 50. In 2009, it was 25%. We decided to meet and talk to a few different baby boomers about their experience with marriage and divorce, and more importantly, what were their expectations?
I think that you have your doubts. They kind of creep in. So there's hesitation, there's self-doubt. I think that's pretty normal with anybody standing at the altar or walking down the aisle. Am I doing the right thing? It was a very funny feeling to be standing there and knowing that there's every possibility you're making a very big mistake, and not to back out of it. And I think that in hindsight now, I did marry the wrong person for the wrong reasons.
When I was in high school and university, I really felt that marriage was the end all, that's the goal. You got married and you worked on this marriage forever and ever. I hadn't really given much thought to the fact that children would change things and life changes, moving, finances, all those things could change. I would say I was not very confident. I really wanted security. I was insecure.
My name is Nudra, and I'm 53 years old. I was born in Pakistan, and I was born in a Muslim family. So most marriages are arranged marriages. Just imagine a woman getting married to a guy she's never met, in many cases never even had a chance to any kind of communication. Maybe she has seen him or sometimes seen a picture. And then, she's a virgin and she gets married and gets to sleep with a man, a total stranger, her first wedding night.
I got home one night from work and she'd had quite a few too many, and she told me, "Why don't you just leave?" I guess I was giving her a bit of a hard time because she was drunk and the kids are still quite young. I said, "Well, if I'm going to leave, I'm going to take the kids with me. I'm not leaving them in this situation." And she said, "Fine." So I did. I always thought that marriage was the way I grew up. Everybody's going to grow up, they're going to get married when they're about 20 years old and have a family of their own. I just wanted a good job and make a good living so I could get on with my life.
Marriage was happily ever after. Marriage was two people starting out in life, building a life, going through middle age together and growing old together, and spend the rest of your life with, and yet it's not going to happen. You wish that you could put it back together like Humpty Dumpty. You think, oh, if only I could do X, Y, Z. I could make it work.
Because I guess they didn't know, my family didn't know me that well, that I go party. I'm not a traditional Pakistani. I'm a little bit more westernized. So they find me this girl and they told me, oh, she's beautiful. And I said, okay, because I felt, to be honest with you, I felt a little obligated. You believe every parent wants good for their children, no matter how their parents are. And she was a beautiful girl, grade 12 student, and I got married. And that didn't last very long.
With an estimated 115,000 weddings a day worldwide, weddings are big business. With an average cost in North America of over $20,000 per wedding, it's become quite the lucrative industry. Personally, I'm reluctant to buy couples a gift when I see the likelihood of their marriage failing.
It's not an issue with the budget at all. So we can work with a $35,000 budget, we can work with a $50,000 budget. And budget has no limit, it can go up to $1 million. There are people who have $1 million weddings. Every girl has a dream of how she wants to plan a wedding, how her wedding day would look like. It's a luxury statement now these days. So it's a statement of having a wedding planner. You know, at the end of the day, it's a bride's day. It's what she wants. It's the groom's day too, but if that's what she wants, you know, that's what she's dreamt of, you know, she is, and if she can afford it, then, you know, that's her day.
When I think of how much money people spend on these wedding days, and I think, gosh, that would buy a house for some people.
There's this terrible pressure. And then many people feel cheated if they don't have that experience, that it's for one day, but for them it's worthwhile to have this fantasy day.
You know, or at least pay off half of their mortgage. To me, that feels like that would be a much better thing to do with that money.
I've spoken to so many people my age who have stood at the altar or had walked down the aisle and said, this is just a huge mistake. I shouldn't be doing this.
And when you think that the divorce rate is so high and you spend thousands of dollars on a wedding, boy, that's just money gone.
And they say things like, well, the guests are all invited and the food's all been ordered. I can't back out of it now. Well.
My wedding day, I think it's like many women would describe their wedding day, kind of a fog. You're just so busy. You're kind of in, you know, you're getting your hair done, you're getting your nails done, you're planning your honeymoon, what are you going to pack? Very little thought is actually given into the marriage itself.
One person who sent me this lovely email about 3 months after I planned her wedding, you know, dear Julie, it was the night of my dreams, you were amazing, blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm so sorry I haven't thanked you before. I don't know if you heard, but we're not together anymore. I was like, oh my God, so sad.
I had a really nice wedding. My folks paid for the wedding. And yeah, actually the day that I got married, I had a lot of doubts. I had a real lot of doubts. And in fact, when I got married and was up at the altar, I cried.
It's just the pressure and the joy they expect to find and the fact that everyone else is doing it and they just do it.
But I think you get into the mode and everybody's invited and, you know, you at that point, and I don't think I was courageous enough to really look at the other side and make that decision.
When you look at what there is to lose and the commitment you're making, and you're worried about a couple of guests and some food and a caterer, I mean, come on. That's insane.
It's a huge, I think it's a problem, but it's a problem that continues to exist, and there's an industry that's doing very well.
But it's not just the older generation taking a change to marriage, it's the younger generation as well. In 1960, the average bride was 20.3 years old, and the average groom was 22.8 years old. By the year 2010, that average age had jumped to 26.1 and 28.2. Granted, this is not a new revelation, as people have been marrying older and older for the last few centuries. So we decided to stop off at the University of Toronto to speak to some students.
Well, you can get married if you want to, but I'm not like all for it. not down to marry. Don't want to get tied down yet, you know.
It's kind of a bit outdated. It's just, I live with someone. You know, he knows I love me, I love him. What more do we need?
I mean, people need to date more people and get to marriage later on in life. Otherwise, you know, like when you marry your first boyfriend, then like it usually doesn't work out. And that's kind of what I've learned from like previous generations. So I'd say wait till you're older.
I think it's good in theory, but most of the time it doesn't work out. I mean, I'm a child of a failed marriage, and I've seen all the stuff that can go wrong. So it's something you really have to be sure about before you get into.
I think being committed to someone, if you just love someone, you know, you don't need a ring on your finger or a ceremony to show that.
I'm almost sure that I will end up with a male partner.
Okay.
And just in general, I mean, I think this fight for gay marriage is kind of, you know, people should be fighting to liberate themselves from marriage, not like, yeah.
Because a lot of people nowadays, they kind of rush into it. Definitely things don't work out, things fall apart. That's a lot of money and effort going to waste, so I think you should take your time with it, definitely.
For me, honestly, it's more of a religious thing because I am Christian, and for me, if it's serve my God is great. But you know, at the same time, there's got to be the love aspect too. He doesn't say marry someone for the sake of marrying someone. You have to have that right connection with someone. And now that I feel I've found that, it's like I feel a joy that makes me feel obligated to almost want to do it.
Unfortunately, this quote here is false. One of the biggest misconceptions about marriage is its ties to religion. Marriage is not inherently a religious act, no matter what your neighborhood churchgoer tells you. It wasn't actually until the 5th century, when the ancient Roman Empire collapsed, that the church courts took over and elevated marriage to a holy union. It wasn't until later in the 16th century that the church even declared a marriage be performed by a priest.
Originally, marriages weren't performed in the church, and the church only reluctantly kind of got into the business. In fact, the church had some of the church fathers had a very negative understanding of marriage, and negative understanding of sexuality. Well, it would be manifestly false to say marriage is only a religious thing, because there are many people who are not religious who get married. There are many wedding ceremonies that don't have any religion in them at all. And even though it's wonderful, if you're able to invoke the Almighty on behalf of your union, it's certainly not necessary. So it was really only in the Middle Ages that the church started to become involved in marriage as a regular kind of thing. And I would say that the services as we now have them are largely shaped by what we've inherited from the church.
See, well, the interesting thing of the history of Buddhism is that, you know, it started as a monastic tradition. So there weren't any particular situations that addressed marriage per se, because marriage is kind of a social cultural convention that different societies have developed.
So Islamically, the marriage means a relation, a legal relation between man and woman.
But even if most marriages are performed in a religious setting, the religion actually has no relevance in a court of law.
And there's many cases where people have said to me, you know, I don't believe in divorce. It's unfortunate, but if your spouse wanted to get a divorce, he or she is going to get a divorce, regardless of what your religion may say.
Some religions even have strict rules regarding relationships. The Catholic religion, against premarital sex, birth control, masturbation, same-sex marriage, and not allowing their priests or nuns to have sex. It's restrictive, to say the least.
In the Roman Catholic Church, divorce is not recognized. You can have a marriage annulled by going before a council, and in effect that is like a divorce, but the Roman Catholic Church would never name it as a divorce. But then divorce is common even in very conservative churches. The issue isn't so much getting a divorce. The issue is, can you remarry?
God didn't create us to be miserable, you know, and the church doesn't say kind of you made your bed, you lie in it kind of thing. No, the church doesn't say that at all. If it's impossible to live with the other person, then you can separate. The issue comes with remarriage, obviously.
The civil court supersedes a religious court. So if somebody wants to get a divorce, you know, we have no-fault divorces. So if somebody wants to get a divorce, they're going to get a divorce. You can't keep somebody in a marriage, right, regardless of what their religion may say.
The question of clerical celibacy is explosive right now because there are so many people within the church who challenge it. And I think there's absolutely no rationale for it. I think there's no biblical warrant for clerical celibacy.
If you want to become a Catholic priest, you can't be married. So, you take the whole bag, a whole bottle of wax. So, no, I mean, I thought about having children and that sort of thing, and a wife. And I guess I just made a choice to go one way. Other people would choose other routes.
This is something that has been imposed by the medieval popes, really as a kind of arbitrary act, or an act to make sure that the clergy would stay somehow above the muddy common people. And it's turned out to backfire horribly, because it means that the church has attracted a considerable number of pedophiles into its ranks who are happy to be celibate because they don't desire women anyway.
There's too much sexual and emotional frustration for most people if they don't get married. So we always encourage, and we try very, very hard to pair people up whenever we can. But at the end of the day, if a person doesn't find that special Mr. Right or Mrs. Right, then we say that perhaps that is destiny as well.
Sometimes we think that if I am a religious person, I'm supposed to be bachelor, I'm supposed to be away from, just like in nuns, they're not supposed to marry. Islam said, no, you have to live natural life and you have to marry.
I think that for a lot of people, there's a certain spiritual component to marriage which has eroded so significantly that people can't even remember why it's important to be married from a religious or spiritual standpoint.
Always be aware in Buddhist view that it's not so much to look for the best partner, but to become the best partner.
He didn't want to leave the house, so he slept in the living room in a sleeping bag, and I was in the bed and I had a big stick beside me because I was so scared. Didn't know what he was capable of. It's really frightening when you are in a situation like that and somebody you've been married to and you thought you knew has all of this other side that's been a big secret. No one told me, no one in his family, no one. You can change your life. It's a lot of us just don't know where to start. It can be daunting. So now I do a lot of that with people. Because of what I went through in my divorce, actually, I developed a process for people with all kinds of different situations. Health is number one. We all think we're invincible until something happens. Second pillar that I work with is change and how change works. The third pillar is looking at what do you want? And the last pillar, the fourth pillar, is passion, adding more love to your life. And nothing is more rewarding than seeing other people get to where they want to be.
Most people are not expecting that a relationship is going to be one of the most intense and difficult and sometimes painful things that they'll ever be involved in their entire lives. And so we're signing up for not just a lifetime of love, because the fantasy never truly becomes real. That fantasy actually hurts more than it does good.
So with a client, I'll start out, what are your values? Then, okay, based on that, where do you want to get to? And the thing that a coach does is we're like 150% supportive of our client, but we also keep them accountable to us, to themselves, to the process of their growth. That's what coaching is.
Well, I had a business. I created mascots and animal costumes. When I'm working with clients, whatever their situation is, if we can laugh about it, well, it's not so bad then. So sometimes I'll take this guy and I'll say, talk about the gremlin, that little voice that tells you all the reasons something isn't going to work out and blah, blah, blah. I'll talk about this one and I'll talk about where you're chickening out. And this is a nice one. I really like, what are you learning? What can you learn from this? And put on your wise hat. So it's lots of fun.
I really push, as a coach, I really push for people, safeguard your health and your fitness. Go to a lot of trouble about that. And in fact, in your 50s, you better start working out.
the golf is a game of discipline. Because once you hit, that's the end. You cannot do it again. So take the tough challenges. And my biggest advice to you is to get yourself a hobby.
I've joined a dragon boat team for breast cancer survivors. So much fun. I've met so many wonderful people, older and younger than I am. And for that hour, you're with wonderful, positive people, and you're concentrating on your new skill. Just found an inner peace that I've never felt before.
The time that I started taking yoga, that it saved my life. It was one of those things that I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't started yoga, because I don't have to think about anything else. I don't have to, I can go someplace else.
Now, Rick's pretty good at the pool table. He's got some nice trick shots. If I win 1 game out of 10, I am happy. If we have a cold beer while we're playing pool, then it doesn't matter who wins or loses. Kicks my ass all the time. One of these days I'll, learn a little bit more from him. But he's good at it.
When I was going through the divorce, I started to draw. This helped me so much. A very good creative experience for me. Going to counselors and whatnot, I focused on what I needed. I found how to live a life.
I do martial arts, and we get ready to train. We turn, we bow to each other again, we stand up, and then we start the exercises. So we start training and liberating up our muscles and getting ready to punch and kick and scream and growl and yell and have a good old time and practice our skills. Well, we don't growl and yell too much, but.
Do the happy dance.
At the moment I'm saying this, there are only 17 countries in the world that recognize same-sex marriage. There's a movement towards protecting the traditional marriage, which has alienated the entire gay community. I wonder what this idea of a traditional marriage is. Is it the traditional marriage in ancient Rome, where a husband can beat and kill his wife? Is it in the 18th century, where you married based on your wealth and divorce was not an option? Whatever tradition they're talking about, the issue of gay marriage has again put the institution's equality and morality into question.
We got married in '86, and '86 was the thing to do. Basically, you just do it, and because that's what's expected. I was so afraid that if I called off this wedding, everyone would know that I'm gay. How they would know that, I don't know, but I knew that, and maybe that's why I didn't want to go there. You're basically socialized, as he says. He socialized himself to be straight. You basically have to, you do that.
John and I have been together for 25 years, but for most of that time we had never exchanged vows or even had a ceremony, and it was like we were waiting for the real thing. In 2004, San Francisco led the way and made it possible for same-sex couples just like us to be able to get married in San Francisco City Hall, and it changed our lives.
Many people got married during that extended moment, but we were still talking about it.
We were processing.
We weren't quite sure how did we feel about this patriarchal institution and what was it really going to mean. And so we were still in the process of discovering and exploring, and that went on for quite a while.
About 18,000 same-sex couples were able to marry in the summer of 2008. But a very conservative political movement put initiative on the election ballot. And that initiative, known as Proposition 8, it took away the freedom to marry. It targeted lesbian and gay people and took away their freedom to marry. It's the first time an initiative had been that targeted against a minority group to take away the rights that they had.
We were getting married just before the Prop 8 anti-marriage
proposition was being voted on here in California.
We did that on purpose. So part of the wedding was a get out the vote.
Although courts often, in fact almost always, are ruling in our favor, that nowadays those rights are then put up for a vote. And civil rights should never be a popularity contest.
Your right to get married has been taken away. You know, that window that was there has now been officially closed. So now we have a two-class system in our country. That's not right. Would you step forward? And what I think we decided was whether we personally wanted to get married or not, we felt very strongly that that should be our personal choice, that it should not be the government's choice telling us or anybody else, this class of people is okay and entitled to full rights, and this class over here, well, you're kind of okay, but we're going to give you some portion of your rights.
April 15th is the day that your income taxes are due. I put my name on, you put your social security number on, and then you get to a little box that asks you, are you single or are you married? And when you turn the form over, you have to sign that you're telling the truth under penalty of perjury. The government is forcing me to lie. It's enforcing me to be in the closet, to go back on that promise I made to myself, to be myself, and to check that box marked single. And it just felt like a dagger through the heart. It just felt, this is a humiliation. This is just simply an affront to our dignity as people.
Polygamy seems to be much more natural for humans than monogamy. Generally speaking, most people go into a marriage hopefully, despite the fact that 50% of first marriages end in divorce and 70% of second marriages end in divorce. People still get married. It's as though they're thinking, well, I'm going to beat the odds.
When you first study marriage and you see that polygamy was just how it was, it's quite interesting. And of course, because marriage was for very different reasons. You didn't marry for love or personal satisfaction. Obviously, not everybody could, or very few people could, in a polygamous society, be polygamous because the math doesn't add up. But very wealthy people or very important people or very prominent people would take, multiple wives. Your average person could only take one because that's all that he could afford, and there just aren't that many women.
Monogamy is a bizarre and egocentric thing for humans. There's nothing to suggest that humans pair bond in nature, nothing to suggest that humans pair bond for life in nature. And in fact, if we start from very first principles, if people did pair bond for life in the wild, there'd be no such term as marriage.
It's tricky because monogamy, I think, is the ideal for a lot of people. I think people think it's easier. It's certainly less complicated. What happens is people struggle with trying to behave in a way that fits that ideal. And the whole idea of cheating, what cheating means, why people cheat, I think those are really important questions.
And so now we're starting to understand it better, and I think that we're seeing people who have affairs are not alone. This isn't just politicians and athletes and entertainers. This is your neighbor. This is your best friend. These are true everyday people who, for whatever reason, love and cherish their family, but need to supplement it with something on the side.
A study of American couples showed that 20 to 40% of heterosexual married men and 20 to 25% of heterosexual married women will commit infidelity. Infidelity happens everywhere in the world, but it is almost universally looked down upon.
So much of it around this centers around monogamy, in my opinion. And where does that construct come from? And where's the evidence that it's either sustainable or beneficial? I think it makes us feel secure when we're in a monogamous relationship, but if we actually knew the true prevalence of infidelity, we wouldn't feel that secure. And if people want to look at me as somehow manufacturing it or creating more of it, they're very naive. It's been happening forever. It will continue to happen forever, whether Ashley Madison exists or not. And so all I'm doing is I'm plucking it out of places where it's more inappropriate. The workplace, or somebody might get passed over for an unfair promotion because someone else is having an affair. You know, a neighbor, a singles dating site with an unsuspecting single person. Those are all the wrong platforms. At least with the creation of Ashley Madison, you now have an aggregation of would-be adulterers who are signing up for this. They're all putting up their hands. That, to me, is a net win for any society.
The traditional definition of swinging is two couples who swap partners. Is the traditional, I think, view and what people think swinging is. And I initially said that if you ever cheated on me, I will leave you. I'm gone, see you later, no questions asked, I'm out of here. And he said, well, I don't really think that's fair. And I'm like, okay, why? And he's like, well, because if you cheated on me, I would want to know why. I'd want to work it out. I'd want to find out where things went wrong. And he's like, in fact, if you wanted to sleep with another guy, I think I'd be totally cool with that as long as you told me about it. And I'm like, what? Like, mind blown.
Give you a tour of the club, show you around, explain the rules, show up at the door, sign a membership saying that you're okay with what goes on here, that you're going to be discreet about it, you're going to be respectful, you're going to understand no means no, and then the rest of it's really up to you. As you see, it's going to be like any regular nightclub. We've got, you know, dance floor and couches, a full bar. It's a much different atmosphere. People want to meet and mingle. They want to introduce themselves. They want to make friends. Whereas a regular nightclub, you bump into someone and you're getting into a fight. Here, you bump into someone, you're like, oh, meet my wife. This is Sarah. There's no obligation to do anything, but you actually, you know, can if you'd like to. And where that happens is in the back, if you'll follow me. Can I grab your butt?
No.
And then if you want to come into the play area, you do have to be either in lingerie, underwear, or in a towel for women, and then, you know, men are in a towel. But this area is for couples only, so, and it does make like a very much a voyeur area for people who like to be watched or just want a little bit more extra space.
Yeah, and singles are allowed every night except for Saturday because we do reserve that for couples only.
Except for single girls, they're always allowed. And we've got, again, extra beds, we've got a sex swing, or a St. Andrew's cross. So people sometimes will just literally put on a show here where they'll say, you know, they'll put a pretty girl up on the cross, or even put two, then, you know, either do flogging or spanking or something. And people tend to either watch what's going on, or will even have sex while people are having, you know, playing on the cross. So it really does an interesting mix.
But the appeal to people is that it looks daring, and it kind of makes people feel like a little bit out of their boundaries, and it's exciting. And
well, welcome to Oasis Aqua Lounge. We are a playground for adults when everything is allowed, and you guys would have lots of fun if you come here. In summer, obviously it's cooler, so everybody can come here and enjoy the deck, suntan naked. We've had events when people just come here and played cards, played poker, played domino. Most of the time it's used for sex. This room is a little tricky. You can close the curtains. If you do, that means do not butt in. It also has two-way mirrors. So when you inside, you be aware that you will be watched. It is a 70s shagging wagon. Some people don't know that I'm the owner, so yes, I get offers, you know, would you like to play? And then I always say, no, I'm the one who keeps the clothes on. I do believe in monogamy. I am very monogamous. I love to be around. However, I am not a swinger and I am not in a lifestyle. I don't judge. I understand that lots of people do not believe in monogamy, and for me personally, yes, I am monogamous. And just be open-minded and don't judge. Like, let everybody be happy, and what doesn't work for you might work for somebody else.
Why get married? I mean,
no, why stay married?
Why stay married? I mean, why not?
Because that's your primary relationship. It's not about being married or not being married. It's just.
That's true, and you don't have to be married to be in the lifestyle. A lot of people are. Most people are, but you don't have to be married. You can be a long-term, you know, common law. But that's, you know, to me, being married meant giving that extra commitment to saying I want to be with her for the rest of my life.
We've been in the lifestyle for 5.5 years. We've built a lot of friends. At our children's birthday party, we had We had almost 50 people at our kid's birthday party, and
true.
they were all friends from the lifestyle. No, they have no idea.
My parents did not know that we were in lifestyle. And the same thing, like right now I'm living what's called in blissful ignorance. I pretend that for the rest of my life I'll be able to hide it from everybody. I think they'll love me and accept me. No, I know they will love and accept me no matter what I do, and because they are really amazing.
But they will cry and pray for you. Your mother will.
That's very possible.
She will cry, she will pray for you, and she will call her friends to pray for us as well.
It's also very possible. I think as my kids grow up, it might be very difficult for me to keep that.
Possible.
Yeah,
you
because
can't do that with children.
Because obviously
the whole school's gonna know what we do.
Oh boy.
A marriage contract is a domestic contract which is entered into between two parties who are contemplating getting married.
Without a lawyer, it's really a matter of processing paper. But as soon as there's kids involved, as soon as there's property involved, then it gets more complicated. And people really should have a lawyer. You know, I've had numerous situations where parties go and enter into an agreement or have a divorce, and then years later they realize what a huge mistake they made, and they then come to us to try to rectify the situation.
If there's a point at which the marriage cannot be considered to continue, they have to recognize it and they need to sort it out, split up whatever assets need, and buy their freedom.
It can speak to their property rights and their support rights in the event that there's a separation or a death of either party.
Basically, what you have to realize about our divorce industry is that we have a section of the populace where divorce is really hurtful to them. And I'm talking about people that are like the $50,000 range. If you make $100,000 a year or more, divorce isn't going to be that hard on you financially. You'll be able to still maintain a lifestyle. But if you're somebody who makes $40,000 a year, by the time you finish with the tax and you go through a divorce and you're paying for 2 families plus lawyers, there's nothing left. You're going to be run into bankruptcy.
It was all about money. And you know, my first lawyer told me divorce is all about money. I had 4 lawyers until there was no money left. They took all the proceeds out of my house. I was on welfare with 2 little kids. He was in turn bought himself a house, lived in a house, and said he had no money in court. But yet he was able to qualify for a mortgage. And that was right after we split up. He was right away able to buy another house, and I was on welfare.
With all these legal problems wrapped around marriage, what are the actual legal benefits? Why do it? Well, there are 4 main benefits that we came across. 1, tax and employee benefits. 2, getting your spouse citizenship or getting yourself into the country. 3, it can improve your credit standing and improve chances of getting a loan. And 4, equalization of property. If you know, marry someone rich.
Spousal support is support that one spouse pays to another, often referred to as alimony, although our terminology here is spousal support.
The quantum of support is based on the income of the payor. So, for instance, let's say, and there's a chart. So let's say the father is making $50,000, and there's a chart that at $50,000 with 2 kids, it's $1,000 a month. So it's you have to determine what the income is for the payor and how much support he or she should be paying to the custodial parent.
Built into his responsibilities as a husband is he's got to provide for his wife. What the ketubah does is that it adds a little bit extra teeth into that financial responsibility, and it basically says that the husband indebts himself financially to his wife such that upon termination of the marriage, whether it be through divorce or through death, the wife gets a lump sum payment from the husband's estate to make sure that she is provided for upon the termination of the marriage. When I promise to provide for you, it means I got to bring home a paycheck and make sure that you have clothes and you have a roof over your head and you have food on the table, not only for you, but for our kids as well. And that's all built into the ketubah.
One thing I've heard from a lot of my clients over the years has been the notion that the sex that was always the most expensive was the kind they didn't have to pay for.
After spending months with our baby boomer divorce group, we decided to throw them a little party. We had them get up in front of the crowd and speak about their journey.
What is it they say? They often say that half of marriages end in divorce, which actually isn't as bad as it sounds because the other half ends in death.
I was married twice. This is the third time with a charm.
True wisdom comes with age, and as we reflect, as we look in the mirror, we can say to ourselves, was I really that bad? Sometimes maybe I was.
You know, I got a lot of confidence back after my divorce. I started to see myself as a complete person after my divorce, you know.
I was thrown into a situation where the only thing I had to do was be a parent because I had the kids. So the last 12 years of my life, that's all I've done, and totally disregarded my life.
I went through all the stages of grief and then said, Carol, you can make it. You can get through divorce.
Through everything I'd seen, I still needed an answer. Why was the divorce rate rising? What was causing this collapse of such a long-running institution?
Some of the most important decisions we make, neither the church nor the culture gives adequate preparation for. One of them is choosing a partner, and the other is raising children. Almost nothing. In our schools, in our churches, it's something sadly lacking.
And both men and women are taught these really impossible, idealized visions of what the other is.
Societally, we're not allowing our young men to actually fully develop their feeling sides. And too often we're asking women to carry all of these emotions and feelings in the relationship for both partners.
You know, when you are graduating your kids from early days, they must know how, for example, they be part of marital relation, how they develop the marriage science. And it's not developed here because we are creating, I can say, either no gender society or maybe, for example, not caring about the gender at all. So man and woman's duty as a husband and wife, it is not described in our system.
So I think LA or Southern California, where I live and where I predominantly work, is, you know, full of second and third and fourth weddings. Personally, I think one of the problems is that so many people go into marriage thinking that they can easily get divorced. Divorce used to be sort of a taboo, and it was sort of, you know, something that other people did. It was almost shameful. And now it's sort of almost expected. I think over half of all marriages end in divorce. I guess that's good for me, but it's sad.
Change and transition, you know, it's almost being built into us. It's like almost planned obsolescence. Do you still have the same kind of cell phone you had back 5 years ago? No, you got the new and improved model, haven't you?
Perhaps not everyone believes in the concept of a soulmate anymore. And perhaps the reasons why people enter marriage are for more superficial objectives and perhaps even more selfish objectives.
Sex, every single study I've ever seen says the same thing. There's a diminishing return on that. The longer you're with a partner, 6 months, 2 years, it's like a shelf life. It starts to diminish.
So there are a number of ancillary causes that increase the divorce rate. But I think that the main cause is what happens or doesn't happen in the marital bed.
It's because we have choices. You know, in the past, a lot of women didn't have jobs, they didn't have money, they didn't have this. But now we do, and so I don't see the divorce rate going up as necessarily an indication that people are not as skilled at relationships. I think often it's because they have belief in relationships, and it's like, hey, the one I'm in is just not a good one. I'd like to be in a good one. I've got a belief that I can find a good one, and maybe both parties go off and do that.
Now, there's so many more wonderful opportunities for women, and rightfully so. I've often heard it said, if you want it done right, give it to a woman. And I can't argue with that too much.
A great deal of choice, as there is now. Should I get married? Should I cohabit? Etc. And people will make choices based on what's in it for them. You know, will they be better off doing this or doing that?
Women up until now haven't had a lot of power or autonomy, and they haven't had a lot of control over their lives. Mine was the first generation where women really worked full-time outside of the house in careers and earned in many instances more than their husbands.
We are living longer as a society, and I think there's a focus today on finding happiness, and people don't want to stay in bad marriages.
So why is the divorce rate rising? It appears to be because today, people have more options than ever. Marriages break down for a reason, and it's a good thing people have the freedom to leave that marriage and find something better. I'm not trying to condemn all marriages or anything. Some people have it great. It's just that the chances of you being in a great marriage are pretty slim. Marriage is a big life decision, and it's not all fun and games. Just consider that when splurging on a wedding, foregoing a prenup, or saying, I do. And my other question, what's the point of this institution? Well, I don't really have a straightforward answer for you. It seems like marriage is different for everybody. It's really about finding your own meaning in it that matters. Marriage isn't everything, and divorce is nothing you can't handle. It may be tough, but life goes on. Did you know that pigeons are monogamous? Same with beavers and bald eagles. And hey, some types of seahorses are even monogamous. Termites, gibbon monkeys, and wolves are also monogamous. And don't forget swans. Yes, these animals find a partner to mate with for life and live happily ever after.
He's by the fire, she's at the table. He wants to tell her, but he's not able to. He chops the wood.